Hello and welcome to this year's Barcelona Design Week Summit 2020. My name's Adam Walker and I'm going to be your host for the next day and a half. So this year's motto, with this in mind, is Design Activism, a Call to Action. And starting from there, we've got some amazing, wonderful speakers and workshops lined up for you over the next evening and full day tomorrow. So with that in mind, I'd also like to introduce Xavier Torres. He's from the Roca Gallery here in Barcelona. And Xavier, you're our venue partner. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Adam. Buenas tardes a tothom, buenas tardes a todos, y si me permitís ahora pasaré al inglés, que es el idioma de los invitados de hoy. Good afternoon, thank you for all. In the first place, I would like to thank all the institutions involved in the organization of Barcelona Design Week. It's an honor for us to be part of the week as a venue partner in one of the most unique editions of the last few years. Design is the best tool for tackling the health, economic, and environmental crises, and that is why design for activism is now more alive than ever. Roca is deeply involved in the design and architectural sectors. Proof of this are the Roca Galleries, a space that we are today, a concept that expresses the need to share and create knowledge for the sector and society, also supporting the company's future challenges by combining the essence of the brand and its values. Today's event is a clear example of the essence of Roca, and I hope that enjoy of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Xavier. And now I'd also like to introduce our two organizers for this year's event. We have Isabel Reusch and Inge Kaiser. Isabel is the Executive Director of the Barcelona Center for Design, and she's also the President of the World Design Weeks. Inge is the founder of the Service Design Days event. She also guest lectures at Elisava and IEDE here in Barcelona, and she's an all-around service design guru. So I'd like to start by welcoming you both, and I'd like to ask you a question to kick things off. What are you most looking forward to about the next day and a half, and what have you most enjoyed about the week so far?
Okay, well, thank you, Adam, for the introduction. Well, I'm very happy to have this a new edition of this summit of the Barcelona Design Week. We just started 2 days ago with a fantastic also opening conference by Paola Antonelli. And I keep one idea, she said, it's about designers are often not invited to processes, and that if they would be, our systems will be better. Now, with the situation we are living and with all these committees of experts and everywhere, if there will be more designers in these committees, I'm sure that many things will be better. So for the coming days, of course, I'm looking very forward to this summit and all the conferences and the great workshops we have this afternoon with this conference of Empathy, which is every more need than ever. And tomorrow conferences and workshops. And also there are, if you are in Barcelona, you can visit some exhibitions at the Design Hub, and you can visit here at the Roca Gallery an exhibition about Mar de Plásticos, about the plastic problem. And I'm nothing more to say. I mean, just enjoy the summit and enjoy all the other activities. And thank you for being with us. I know that there are people from many countries attending this conference, so hello to all and thank you for registering.
Excellent. And I believe we have Inge on the line. She's joining us virtually.
Yes, here I am. No, I would like to answer your question as well, Adam. So yes. I remember the talk from Paola, the curator at MoMA, and I remember she was talking about the role that we have as designers and being critical, but also being brave and questioning the status quo. And we might not feel very familiar or comfortable with that, but I do think it is needed to make a difference and create impact. And the summit will be all about that as well. I'm really looking forward to that. It will be a mixture of talks and workshops, hopefully some lively discussions as well. And like Isabel said, we will talk about empathy, critical thinking, being collaborative, very important, stepping over boundaries, building trust. And so the only thing I want to say is that I wish us all a very inspiring but also empowering summit.
Excellent. Thanks, Inge. Okay, so I think we can start with our opening talk, and for that I'd like to introduce Emma Jeffries, Dr. Emma Jeffries. Emma is an organizational designer with a passion for helping others thrive by embracing empathy and curiosity. Emma has led spreading and workplace empathy mindset across the UK government. She's also co-written 2 books on organizational transformation, which are excellent, by the way. I've read them both. And they are based on organizational transformation using design thinking. And Emma, you may or may not know this, but you're also the reason why I'm in Barcelona, because many years ago we had a discussion and you persuaded me to spread my wings out of the UK. So I thank you for that. Wow. So on that note, I believe your talk, Empathy and Compassion are needed for radical social change. And I'll hand over to you if that's okay.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Adam, for that introduction. No problem. I'm really glad to be opening with a subject that's really passionate for me, empathy and compassion. I believe like people are fundamentally really amazing, and when we all are some kind of imperfection. We all have these imperfections, and I think sometimes we can be often like too busy, focused on our own goals and like and we overlook how seeing people as people. So I'm just going to start to share my screen with our presentation. And so the work that I've done, and I'm the founder of the We Mindset, which is a company helping to embed empathy inside organizations. And that, for me, has started within the UK government, which has now led to a movement of a group of people really thinking about what an empathetic culture looks like in government. Okay. So I think Corona really for everyone has been so challenging. People have to take care of their kids. People may have lost their jobs, and we're really lacking this connection. I think one thing I see that Spanish people know really well is that we really need human connection. And during this presentation, I'll briefly share the work I've done in the UK government, but I'm really excited to share with you a framework, a humanizer framework to start us looking at how do we really do radical empathy and radical compassion. And at the end of the talk, I'll leave with these small actions that everyone can start to take to really think about how do we actually get to the sustainable goals. So these are the 17 sustainable goals from the United Nations, and they are really this roadmap to ending poverty and providing a planet and making sure that everyone prospers. I first came across all of these goals when I was in Brazil, when someone from the United Nations was really presenting these at the EPIC conference. For me, it was about like, how are we actually physically going to achieve this? And now we've only got 10 years to get there. And design thinking has been this really favorable approach from the UNDP. And that really draws on design thinking, and different innovation labs have been set up in different places. But how do we actually get there, and how does design really become part of that? And I would say one word is empathy. Most people really are wanting certainty and some kind of control over their lives. But I've seen, in terms of what I've read about and all of the experience I've had, is that designers are really this ability to embrace ambiguity and be curious about the people around them. And in terms of design thinking, they're really good in terms of bringing material ideas together and helping put human beings really in the center, and helping people really connect emotionally with what the experience of that human is. And empathy and compassion lead to action. And empathy itself is really this skill. And there's a really great book called The War for Kindness. And it really argues that we can build this. It takes courage, and it really is about self-reflection. Empathy, as you see on this slide here, has a pair of shoes there. But for me, empathy is not walking in other people's shoes. Everyone has a different view of the world around them. I can't assume at the moment how it is for you to be really sitting at home and what your environment is. It's all about having that curiosity. Empathy is really about seeing the world around you. And I think another part of empathy that's always missed out is, how are we seeing the world as an individual, and how are we bringing that in? Sometimes we don't really want to bring hold that mirror up to ourselves and see parts of our biases. And when we actually are curious, when we have empathy towards ourselves, starting to understand our experience and other people's experiences, we use that to guide actions and things really change. So when we are feeling compassionate, it's all about feeling other people's feeling that lead us to action. However, there's a study where empathy itself has really decreased by 40% in the last 20 years. This has declined so much more in the last millennium. So, and they're also saying this study by the University of Massachusetts for social research, they say that students are less likely to admit that they're actually bothered about other people's misfortune. This has been nicknamed the empathy deficit. In our world that we're living in today, in terms of where we are with Corona, that's probably increased because everyone's working from home. And we really need that sense of connection. Given this really alarming empathy deficit, I think now is really the time that we need to think about radical empathy and compassion, so we can really understand other people's lives, and not just that, but their lives, their pain, so we can get to the understanding of that original bias and really confront that. For me, radical empathy is really about helping people, not just yourself, but other people, fully open and consider other points of view. Listen and keep listening when you don't agree. Be curious about other people that are not like you and how they're acting and understanding their experiences. And then we can come to a point when we actually do celebrate difference and embrace similarities by paying attention to others. It's really moving past what we often see as an us and them and seeing everyone is actually connected. I believe designers are really this ability to spread radical empathy for the reasons mentioned above and compassion to inspire collective change. And it's really about saying no more. No more that you will not stand for what you are seeing around you. I love really difference. And this is, I'm in Portland, Oregon. And every night there's been protests about the Black Lives Matter. And I've been outraged to hear how people have been really treated here. One sign I'd seen was, "We are old enough to know better." And this was from an old couple. We are old enough to know better. Everyone's lives matter, and enough really is enough. No more, and we need everyone to matter, and our planet matters. So as Adam had mentioned, I've written 2 books and co-written them about the critical role design has played in the last 10 years. We are really in a position of injecting empathy into organizations. And one of the roles we defined was a humanizer role. Designers need to use this humanizer role to really turn towards the society and inject empathy into social issues. We need to be able to do that together and hear and see people so we can move towards that collective action. So I feel in this time of where we're at now, 2020 has really awakened to what we are learning about our humanity. For me, the framework that I want to suggest is really that it starts with me. It always starts with that we really need that human connection. I think Corona's really, really taught us that so much. And the we part is that we impact everyone around us. And that could be Black Lives Matter and Corona. I think there's one more step that I would never have suggested to people when talking about empathy, that we need to move to a place of us. So if I can just get to share the video of the fire. So this is a video right outside where I live, and this was the fire starting to come in. And having had all of the stuff that happened this year, our sky started to turn orange. And in that week, that was probably the one hardest week we had. And for me, the first time after we had all of them fires and having clean air to breathe, that was amazing. I mean, I know you can take off your mask, but I think Corona has given us all of this shared experience, and the fires are really waking us up to climate change. And for me, that week, and you had smoke in your house, and you could smell that, and it was getting into your lungs. That was really, really hard. So going back to how do we turn what we know as designers and how we are empathetic? How do we do that? And it comes back to moving and helping people feel that radical empathy and compassion. So I propose this humanizer framework for designers to help build towards some social action with other people and help people develop them empathy skills so we can really address the sustainable development goals. And it's really moving from a me, which is how can you use your design approaches and empathize and start with yourself. And when I mean me, I mean an individual. Then we move to we as a group, and it's empathizing with others. And how do we do that? How do we, as the group that we're in, empathize with others? And then it's the us, that final part of multiple groups coming together and forming a movement. Both me and we draw on radical empathy, which is about understanding people who are different than us, observing our own biases from our experiences that we've had. And radical empathy is about the us. Radical compassion is really about the us. It's seeing the humanity in someone else. And then how do we move to creating that similarity between us? So the work I've done in the UK government, I just want to move on to that, to show them the work that I've done and how I've used this framework to really build the momentum to create a shift inside of the UK government. So before I explain what I've done, I'm just going to explain about why design is really critical inside and how do we play that part inside the government. Most policies in government are made into services. And as a user researcher on a digital team, you implement that service. But as we've seen, there's loads of, this policy lab in the UK have done a really good job of making research and design move really further up the chain. And all policies impact our lives. And when a policy doesn't really think through and how it's impacting people's lives, the Windrush scandal in 2018, where it was a real urgency where people were being deported, and there was about 83 cases wrongly deported from the UK by the Home Office. So for me, I've taken 5 years to create a design intervention inside the UK government. These are amazing people that have come together and really thought about, come together as the Empathy in Government group. And their aim really is to increase empathy of civil servants and create an inclusive environment so that we can have better policies and services for our citizens. And they're so passionate and they're so courageous that they really want to come together, support each other, and change the system. It started for me with, on one design team, listening to the business stakeholders and realizing that the reason why we weren't doing very well at what we were doing at that time was because we needed to listen to our stakeholders. And once we listened, they came back to me at a certain point and says, Emma, I just don't get, my stakeholders who I'm now working with don't get empathy. Then on the we level, I created a formal program, which was called the Me Way Workplace Empathy Program, derived from the work previously before government, that really is now starting to be taken note by policymakers, and we engage with senior leaders to start to spread what workplace empathy is, because we need everyone in the system to start to take on empathy. And finally, us, which is these group of people that have come together who are amazing from 5 different government departments. And in the UK, there is over 5 million people employed by the UK government. So when I say it starts with us, it starts with me as an individual. That's about empathy being empathy. We need to understand first is empathy is critical for our well-being. And why is there a lack of it at the moment? And how do we keep our empathy switch turned on when we're not hearing what we actually might want to hear? And the key training for me for this has been 8 weeks of mindfulness training to allow me to be present and also to be able to put judgments aside and really question them. Empathy is really for us to protect. It's for us to really, it's a survival skills because we actually function better in groups. Our human wiring really has evolved so we depend on each other and we live longer. So we are wired to be in groups. So, and when we feel that we belong. And when we feel lonely, it could be as much as 15 cigarettes per day from the Times article on the power of kindness, which has just come out. Everyone really, when you feel left out, it can also feel as much as a punch in the nose. Our body really feels that impact and it stays with us. We need to all feel that we belong. As a child, we're never really born with any of this judgment. We're curious about the world around us. I mean, these two kids are amazing. They look like they're having so much fun. We all have an inner child inside of us that's still there, that really wants to play and wants to be seen and wants to be heard. I feel I've kept my curiosity alive because I'm dyslexic, and I've kept on knowing that I see differently and other people see differently. But there's always a part of that we are trained by our society to think there's a winner and there's a loser. From a young age, we've been imprinted with that, with Sports Day and having sports teams. Sometimes we could be picked last in that sports team. And I think as we go along, we are now in a place where society is kind of favoring this individualism, and we look at success as wealth, and people really just strive for this individual goal and saying, I've got a nicer car. And fair enough, these things are really important, but they're not the only things. And individualism is really much more favored than collectivism. And we learn that there's really an us and there's a them. In Reinventing Organizations, it says that organizations are really this model of society, which echoes that win-lose. And organizations focus on developing cultures around this individualism. And this is a really good article, if you haven't seen it, by Nina, that really thinks about how can we move past just providing value only for our stakeholders. There's also another part to this Michigan study, which is amazingly highlighting this deficit. And why is that actually here? They said because we're going such a fast pace of life, we are stressed. And also in terms of this stress, we are also seeing so much news around us, and that can feel so helpless. there's also a limit to our empathy every day. There's a Harvard Business Review article which talks about that. We have a limit. So we need a group of people to come together collectively to be able to turn our empathy switches back on. And the skeptics to the article about this 40% less decline in empathy, which I would favour to believe, is that people that are closest to you, you've lost the empathy towards them. And this skeptic says we haven't. It's still there, and it still drives our social norms and interactions every day. And this is where I see the gap, that people can be empathetic towards each other, but how do we move past that to empathise with the wider goals? And this will be key for the Sustainable Development Goals. We do that by, first of all, reducing our stress. So about 70-80% of our stress is actually self-imposed. We want to be a high achiever. We are not accepting our weakness. And I noticed this after having done an 8-week mindfulness course, that I was actually walking into the government buildings with my hands, the clenched fist like this. And I was like, okay, what's this about? And I was really wanting them to really see the users. But if I had my fists really tight and I wasn't letting go, I wasn't really allowing space to really hear everyone. Yes, users are important, but what you need to do is to be able to let go partly of that stress so you have the freedom to choose which path. And when you are more calm, what happens is you're able to connect better with other people and you have space to be able to do that. And it's moving past this win-win, this win-lose to a win-win culture where everyone is valued. So I can raise that person up and this person raises up and we all then raise up together. And the outcome of me looking at myself is radical empathy, starting with yourself and showing up for others and really starting to view difference and saying that's okay. One person alone, when you think about going to this we mindset, will not kind of lead to change. And in the government, it was about, for me, trying to see how I can embed empathy into practical actions each day. And moving to this we part of it is really about developing self-awareness of people's impact on each other. So together we can build inclusive behaviours. It's really about how are our biases affecting people around us. And for me, the key training to be looking at that has been Gestalt training, and how are you showing up in that group? And when you start to think about that moving from a me to the we mindset, it's really about starting to think about checking your biases. How are your judgments? Are you actually, the biases changing into judgments of others around you? It's keeping that empathy switch on. And when you're challenged, really hearing it open to other people's point of view and understanding how you are feeling and how that feeling is impacting, if you're a leader, impacting the people around you, your emotions do impact the people around you. When we feel supported and heard, we can then come together around a goal. So a me mindset is when we get stressed. And when I get stressed, what happens for me is I go up into my head and I feel like I've lost my body. It's all here and there's not room for other people. When you go to a we mindset, it's really about saying I have a need, you have a need, and how do we get there together? And job titles and roles are, yes, they're important, but you're really seeing the person. So yeah, if you could start the video on the dancing, that would be great. So as you can see, there's this one person dancing alone. And then you see a second person starting to join in. And this is what happens when you start to kind of listen. And you'll see someone kind of coming and just doing that, dancing with them. Then they start to listen together. Then after a while, you'll start to see people going, they're having a change in what they're doing. And then they start to have more groups of people really coming around them as you can see soon. He's having a bit of fun there. And as the more groups people come round, what you'll see is that it's really about building that community of people that are really starting to support each other to do something different. After a certain amount of time, you'll see loads of people like come together at once and start to really, and that person who led it doesn't need to be there anymore. So you might see him just fade away. And the people that are then around the outside really feel left out and want to be part of that group. And I feel that's the work that I've done in the UK government. So if we could just stop that video there. Okay. So I'd say, going back to Inga's point, it's really about being okay and having the courage to stand out. Really dance to your own beat and share your passion. Someone will eventually follow. And for me, it's also been about, I've had to change how I show up, and I've had to really meet people where they are at. And I've had to take a lot of care of myself along the process. It's a slow process, but we need a slow process to create strong foundations. And I've had to move now, and where I'm at now is just listen to the group. I step back and allow them to lead, which is hard. Don't get me wrong, it is. But for me, it's for them to lead and take this forward. And the value of this, the value of difference, when you get to that we mindset is amazing, because you start to value difference, and it is uncomfortable, but it is so critical for our well-being. You start to see that person, and Airbnb had an ability with people just picking people like them, and they got past that by adding more information about that person. And it's really, again, knowing your impact and knowing that you're not trying to fix that other person. They are enough how they are, and you are enough also. So the last part, which I said I would probably never show because I don't know whether the world was actually ready for that, is the us part of it. And if you get to that point of creating that collective movement and having done the design interventions, and with me, that is looking at supporting the group and doing design thinking still with them, the us is where we really move towards compassion. It's a feeling of owning our own pain and allowing that to be present. People often don't like to see people that are different than them, but that's actually where we grow. So radical compassion is comprised of, I really want to see that other person, not for the sake of saving their humanity, but for saving actually my humanity, and refusing to dehumanize other people. This is really a journey from thinking about how do we relate to difference to how do we relate to similarities. And we are really all interconnected. And this is when we start to see all people as people. And the key training I've had in looking at this, which is around compassion-based living and also inner child work. This is an amazing picture of what's happened with the protests. And it really summarizes how I do see compassion as a form of activism. This is people protesting on the bridge, which is quite close to me, and everyone's lying down in the same position as George Floyd. And if we are going to move to a position of radical empathy, it starts with self-compassion and understanding. There's a really great article in the New York Times, which is where humans suffer is more visible than ever. We are seeing it around us. It's playing out in the news, but compassion offers us a compass, a way of being that points us to the direction where we need to cooperate, foster trust, and really think about how are we in like human flourishing and how are we working all together. It starts with ourselves, and it might just start off with keeping a journal and how are you relating to the us and them. And I think when it moves to that point of radical compassion, this is an amazing model for changing how we think about doing policy. We are all connected, and we all have the power, and I suppose designers have that power of bringing people together and be part of that conversation. And this model, really the donut model, if you've heard about it, it's about humanizing the 21st challenges and really thinking about how are we meeting the needs of everyone and of the planet. And Kate is an economist, and she's really captivated. So all the way along the outside is either climate change and thinking about how do we bring this into policy and change that. And I believe designers have this ability to make things really simple and ideas come to life. And I think that's really key if we're going to start to move towards these actions. And it may seem when you're moving towards working together that you're giving up power, but you're actually getting more power. And the outcome of us is seeing each other's similarities and leading together so we can take action. And I really get annoyed when I hear someone say, I'm just a number. No, you're a human and everyone matters, and really our planet really matters. And before I finish, I just want to summarize with really some small actions that how we can think about ourselves and with other people, moving from a me, we to an us. And these actions will allow us to start to see people as people and help like all of us realize we are all connected and we all have impact on each other. These are this, if you start with that me mindset, it's about starting to reduce your stress. It's taking care of yourself and asking yourself the question, how might I calm myself to be able to listen to others, even when people might be different than me and my own views. And when we start to move to how are we paying attention to other people to promote this win-win culture, it's about slowing down. It's about actively listening and without interruption and expectation of our own, and really putting them expectations behind us. It's saying everyone has a view and that's okay, and fully listening. When we move to the next part, when what small actions can we take? For me, I've started to write down my triggers when I'm seeing us and them, and they show up all the time. It could just be an email that comes in and someone's asking me to do that. I'm like, why are they asking me to do that? All of our emotions are stored, as I said, in our body. And when I was, obviously, if you feel like you're kind of with that hand fist, as I mentioned before, it's really about practicing how, when you are in that us and them situation, what I do now is I just try and relax my shoulders, which seems to relax my body to be able to then go, okay, that was just me, that wasn't them. And I'm really starting to, what do they actually need and how can I help them move forward? And when we're moving to the win-win, it's about how are we paying attention to all of that group and how is everyone taking responsibility for that group? And as I said, there's a little child inside everyone that wants to be heard and wants to belong. We are wired that way. So it's in a group, it could be as simple as asking, is there anyone else who hasn't really talked here that would like to share their view? And sometimes it might not be, but it's about inclusion. Then it moves to the us. This is where it gets uncomfortable, and this is where it really addresses the gap from us relating to another person to us really empathizing with other people and other issues outside that are really predominantly what the Sustainable Development Goals are about. It's about creating that deeper connection with someone else so you're able to see that other person as similar to us, even if they had a different background, a different experience, a different part of the world, comes down to this really about this reducing our stress and asking ourselves, what are we avoiding? Which conversations are we avoiding putting off? I've put off loads of conversations in the past. I'm just too busy. And it's also about who are we moving away from? And from doing the Gestalt training, I had a bit of a surprise with that one, because I would move away from white males. Because I love difference, and I love different opinion. I always seek out different opinion. But I wouldn't, my assumption, and this is my bias, that the white males would have just a generic view and they wouldn't challenge me. That's not the case. The next part is really thinking about the win-win situation. And this is when we can start to think about looking for humanity in other people. And asking the question, when you start, it could be just at the start of a call or at the start of meeting someone new, and looking to see, instead of seeing someone's difference, how are we seeing that human quality inside them and reflect it back? And human quality could be honesty, integrity, it could be self-awareness, it could be a range of different things. And it's too easy, really, really just too easy to put people in boxes. You're in that box, and make assumptions. Everyone is so unique. And we need to stop demonizing people for our own convenience. And if we're going to meet the Sustainable Development Goals, we can't afford not to. So in summarizing this talk, I hope that you might take one of the small actions I proposed in the framework. And the action is about having radical empathy and compassion. It's in the preparation for how we act together. It's really how we act and how we get prepared for that. And action is not just something that you do, you have to get prepared for it. With empathy for ourselves and others. And what we need to think about is, how might we really fully be that masters of empathy within ourselves, so we can really start to turn empathy back on other people. And start to help people see all people as people. So I just want to say thank you, and I wish you really an inspirational day for coming up. And I love to listen, and I'm all ears, and I hope you are too.
Thanks, Emma. That was really, really good. I've got a few questions from the audience, if we don't mind going through those.
Yeah. Would you like me to stop sharing my screen?
I think it stopped sharing. Yeah.
Is it? Perfect.
It's not sharing, yeah. So the first one I've got is from Simon. He asks, do you think, as most designers he knows are of similar political leanings and worldviews, that our bonding to other designers creates a biased groupthink that we so seek to avoid?
I think it potentially does, because within our last government meeting, when I was starting to think about it, I said everyone thinks the same. We need to bring people in that challenge our viewpoint. Otherwise, how will we start to kind of really empathize with other people? Yeah,
I agree. And just following on from that, there's another question from Solange, who asks, it's true that we as designers have a certain power and we must use it to create empathy and so on, but most of the time the guidelines come from stakeholders, usually business and focused in numbers. So how, in your experience, have you handled that situation?
That was where it started for me. When I came into the team, we weren't listening to our business stakeholders. And there was one design thinking workshop where we started to really just listen to our business stakeholders and realizing we were causing them pain, and actually together we could relieve that pain. And that's the point that the conversation changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm following on from that point. I wonder if do you think there's something missing in terms of the education we go through as designers to prepare us for that situation? Because I think maybe there's many designers that go into that situation in-house, for example, and they're a little bit new to that world. And I wonder if there's something lacking in our education in the design industry where we're not prepared for that situation. So how did you realize at that point, oh, we're actually hurting the stakeholders? Is there anything we could have done earlier in the education process to prepare you for that? If that makes sense.
You can be so focused over on empathizing with, I think we're taught to be focused on empathizing with our customers. We're never taught to empathize with what the problems of a business is. And I actually know if we are able to solve that, I think that's the key. And when I've shared that with a lot of people in government, even designers in government, they've mentioned that to me, we're looking in the wrong place. Yeah. So that it could be, we've still got the same skills of empathizing with the same skills, but just how do we shift that over?
Yeah. There's a follow-on question from the audience. Do you think empathy itself is being taught enough in design schools, and how can we teach to get empathic designers?
Oh, it's a good question. I haven't been in design school for a long time, so I'm not sure about that one. I can only base it on my experience that I've had to do so much training in the last 10 years to be able to, and that's my choosing to do that, because I know the benefits of that. There could be more training needed. But I reckon that I feel that people, it's their own journey as well, and you could teach it, but I don't know, will people listen as well? And because they won't know the context in which it's in. My development has come from realizing what I need to do in that situation of when I'm designing. So.
Yeah, and I guess on the flip side, I think that also comes back to my question earlier about whether or not we're teaching enough people. There's a balance. Do we teach them enough empathy within design school, and do we teach them enough real world experiences in terms of what to expect when they go into industry in design school? And I'm not sure if there's a balance being met, or if you have an opinion on that. For example, there's some good examples in the UK again of companies that are bringing in trainings for designers that are slightly left field. They're more around, and I think you mentioned it, self-reflection training for their design teams, and confidence training for their design teams, and training around, organizational practices. I wonder what your opinion on that is.
I worked with first-year design students as part of my PhD to develop self-awareness, and a lot of people said that it couldn't be done. Oh, really? and it did, and that's why that was that contribution to knowledge of helping designers do that reflection process in a way. So I do feel there's a bit more needed around self-awareness and self-reflection, because that's the foundation stone for you to be able to start radical empathy and compassion. Because if you can't see yourself in the work that you're doing, that then comes to master's level work about self-awareness. I know at Northumbria Design School there's a training in doing that work of developing and reflecting on your actions. So it is there. It probably just needs to be reframed for the context that we're in at the moment, and added to.
Yeah, I know the design school well. That's where I was. I just want to come back to part of your talk earlier on, where you talked about the decline in empathy and you had those statistics. Did you ever see anything, or do you know of anything in terms of the decline of empathy maybe versus the decline of self-reflection? Is there any information you've seen on that? And I wonder if there's any correlation there.
That's a good point. I haven't seen anything in terms of that part. But if you are busy, and you're always doing, and in this time we're in COVID, I think we're always busy and doing. Finding time to self-reflect is, and making the time for it, which I do prioritize that, because I want to know how am I impacting myself and how am I impacting the other people around us is really critical. But I can't speak for everyone.
Yeah. I wonder if, personal thoughts, I wonder if there's a correlation between this, like you mentioned again, this information overload where maybe we have too much information and it's taking away the time, we can't self-reflect. I heard a nice analogy recently, information, it's kind of like junk food, junk information. There's too much information and it's maybe absorbing too much of our time and we can't self-reflect, like you say. I'm really curious. I wonder if there's crossovers between that and the decline in empathy.
I think I'll probably add to that, when you are stressed and when you're in a fear mode, which, I mean, everyone probably gets out their iPhone and check the news. I certainly do. I'm in America. So you're like checking that, and that's actually building up fear. And when you're in a fear state, you can't empathize with other people, and you can't get yourself out of that pattern of just keep on checking as well.
Exactly. Just a couple more questions, if you don't mind. So one from Anne Bartlett Bragg. So do we need to expose people's varied experiences to develop awareness of context?
I would say definitely. Like when I've been aware, not just of from a user research perspective, every time you go to someone's house and you interview someone, their context shifts what you think about that user. Every single one does. And it's the same but you have to be able to look beyond that. Like you have to be able to look beyond that person or how you have labeled that person. And I think that's the point. So if you are stuck at that point, you won't look beyond that context, and you'll always be, as I mentioned before, you'll always be moving back to it's the user, and we need to focus on the user, but actually we need to focus on everyone's needs and everyone's experiences and really do that self-reflection about who do I need to get that experience off to do the work that I need to do. Yeah,
that's completely, I couldn't agree more. That's why I value in context, in-home interviews are just so valuable in building that. One more from Sella. We have, could we be more empathic by giving inventors, people like artists, scientists, the temporal monopoly of their invention? So what if corporations cannot own intellectual property, but only the inventors themselves?
Wow. I'm not sure how to answer that one. So intellectual property is a whole minefield. I do know that. Yeah. So I'm not sure I can really answer that question. Okay. I don't know if you've got an answer to that question yourself.
Like you said, it's a bit of a minefield, that area. I do have I'm conscious of time. I just had one final question. I'm wondering if you've got any advice for young designers, people that are, just coming out of university, in terms of when they find themselves in culturally difficult organizations or industries, how can they look to your framework and how can they even start to think about making those changes or applying parts of that framework?
So I would say start with the 8-week mindfulness course. It's really good to be able to start to become aware of and being present. Mm-hmm. I mean, that for me was my starting point into this work. But I would also add to make sure that you really build your own support system as well. When I joined a government agency, I made sure that there's so many people that work there, and you can really build that support system with you, and that allows people you can have conversations slowly. If you overload them, which I've done in the past, it starts to turn people off. Yeah. So it's really just small steps and take it slowly and realizing what you need to do to go down whatever journey you need to do to develop your own personal empathy and compassion.
Yeah. Excellent. I mean, one final point that I was just thinking towards the end, it feels like your framework and your talk needs not just to be heard by designers, but people within organizations that are not necessarily in the design field, but higher up in the organization. Do you know what I'm getting at? I'm just curious what your thoughts on that are, and how would you reach to do that?
So how we have within what we've done, not the framework itself, but in terms of that me and the we, because I said I never propose the us. And everyone seems to, from a leadership perspective, get it, but they have to also see numbers with it, and you have to build the data around why you do that. And we're slowly building the data to make sure that it in terms of data wise and how's it bringing return on investment, which is always ask the question.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's all the questions and probably all the time we have. So I'd just like to thank you again, Emma. This has been really, really good. Super insightful, and I'm sure everybody in the audience enjoyed it. I just want to say thank you again.
Thank you. It was nice to see you again. And it's nice to be able to present what I'm passionate about as well.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Thank you very much. And we'll speak to you again sometime soon, hopefully.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye, Emma. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining. This has been a super insightful first session, and we have plenty more coming tomorrow. I want to say thank you to Isabel, Inga, and Emma, and Xavier for allowing us to host in this amazing space. It's virtual this year. I'm sure it's different for everybody, but we're making it work, and it's going very, very well so far. Tomorrow we have 2 workshops starting at 9:30 a.m. and 10 a.m. That will be context mapping in health innovations, and we also have closing the loop in 2030, creating sustainable fast fashion. So those are the workshops that are happening first thing in the morning. And then in the afternoon from 3 p.m. we have 2 talks running alongside each other. The first 2 is The Collective Future of Social Design by Nick Stanhope. The second one is Innovation in Times of Crisis with Christian Francassi. And then at 4:45 in the afternoon, we have the final 2 talks, Designing for Good by Actively Empowering Everyone with Carl Emil Henson. And then the second one and the final one, Become Relentless Change Agents with Leslie Ann Noel. So that's all happening tomorrow, and I can't wait to see you all there, and hopefully this has been a great start. Thanks again for joining, and have a great night, and I'll see you all tomorrow.